Alright, what's going on everyone? While Standard may have recently rotated with the release of Dominaria United, I am pleased to tell you that many of the Standard Challenger decks from last year are still quite playable in the new Standard. Today we'll be looking at Gruul Stompy, and I'll show you what you can do to make your deck legal to play in the new Standard. So this is the original deck list. This is not upgraded in any way. This is what you got right out of the box. And if we highlight in red the cards that rotated out of Standard, it looks like this. And it's not that bad. It looks like a lot of red, but keep in mind, there are only single copies of Gold Span Dragon and Thundering Rebuke. The lands can be replaced with basics, and Snakeskin Veil has a very easy bulk uncommon replacement, so it's not really that bad. The most impactful cards we lost are Jaspera Sentinel, Magda, and Ranger class. So the first two are part of the deck's ramp package, as the Sentinel could tap Magda for 2 mana. That is to say, you tap Sentinel, you tap Magda, that adds a mana but also produces a treasure, which gives you 2 mana basically. And then Ranger class was also an important aggro threat. It allowed you to put pressure on and maintain that pressure with +1/+1 counters. So sometimes if you were on the play and you got a turn 2 Ranger class, the opponent just couldn't stabilize, and that was really nice. But can we find replacements for these key cards? And the answer is absolutely yes. So let's start with Ranger class. We have a pretty clean replacement in the form of Quirion Beastcaller. Similar to the Ranger class, the Beastcaller is a 2 mana 2/2. It makes a 2/2 on turn 2. That's what Ranger class did with the Wolf token. And then on future turns, it will generate +1/+1 counters, just like the Ranger class. In this case, it is whenever we cast a creature. So the enchantment would let us distribute those counters however we wanted. But on the flip side, the Dryad doesn't require any additional mana investment. You had to level up the enchantment. Once you have the Dryad, it's going to start making counters every time you cast a creature, which is pretty good. Unfortunately, the Beastcaller isn't going to give us an effect similar to the level 3 on the enchantment, but on the plus side, when it dies, it will redistribute its counters to other creatures, so that's nice. So overall, I think this is a pretty clean replacement. These are bulk, they're very cheap. You can take out those 4 Ranger classes, replace them with Beastcallers, and I think that's absolutely fine. Next, we need to replace the Sentinel, and unfortunately, we don't have a 1 mana dork in Standard, but we do have Llanowar Loam Speaker, and this is fine. It's not bad. It's a serviceable replacement. It's a 2 mana 1/3, so it doesn't come out on turn 1, but it can tap for any color. And on the plus side, the Loam Speaker can turn your lands into 3/3s, and that can help get around opponents' blockers in the late game. The fact that our mana dork will start turning our lands into 3/3s that we can throw at our opponent is pretty good, and it sort of replaces Den of the Bugbear as well, so it's actually not bad. So Magda is basically impossible to replace symmetrically. That is to say, we can't replace her with a similar card. There's just nothing that does this in Standard right now, but there is a pretty fantastic Gruul 2-drop that fits right into this aggressive Gruul deck with Yavimaya Iconoclast. So 2 mana 3/2 Trampler, it's already pretty good, and if you kick it, it'll get +1/+1 and haste for the first turn. So it's either a 2 mana 3/2 Trampler, that's fine, or a 3 mana 4/3 Trampler on turn 1, and it'll go back to a 3/2 after the first turn you play it. It's pretty good on turn 2 as a 3/2 Trampler. It can work on turn 3 if we already have a turn 2 play, and if we top deck it in the late game, the fact that it has haste also means it works pretty well. It's a great surprise threat in the late game, so I think this is absolutely fine. Then we have Snakeskin Veil. This one's easy. We just replace it with Tamiyo's Safekeeping. The Veil adds a counter, which is great, but the plus side of the Safekeeping is it adds Indestructible. So you can use it as a combat trick where you make a blocker indestructible, something like that, to get rid of a creature. That's nice. Also gains life, so it's good against aggro decks. So yeah, they're a little bit different, but they're also similar enough that if you're playing Snakeskin Veil, swapping it out with Tamiyo's Safekeeping is not the end of the world. They're both pretty good. And another easy swap is Thundering Rebuke. This just goes right into Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike is in Standard. It's pretty simple. It does 1 less damage, but it can target players. so you can finish off the opponent if they're on their last legs. More versatile, would probably have been played in this deck if it was legal in Standard last year. It's pretty great. In fact, Lightning Strike is so good, you could probably take out one of the Abrades for a second copy. I think that's worth it. I personally would take out an Abrade for another Lightning Strike. And that leaves us with a single copy of Goldspan Dragon, and this can basically replace with any threat you like, any big, giant, stupid threat. Right now, I think the best option is probably Workshop Warchief, just because it lines up so well against the black control deck that's been everywhere lately. If you're playing in a competitive environment, chances are you're going to be playing against Liliana and Sheoldred and all of this stuff. And this is great because it has 5 power, so it trades with Sheoldred. And if we have to sacrifice it to Liliana, it leaves behind a 4/4 token, so that's nice. So yeah, this is a great metagame choice right now, but you could also just add another Ovenwold Oddity, another Huntmaster or something like that. That's also fine. So at this point, our main board, not looking at our mana base and our sideboard, our main board is standard legal, though I do think we can optimize a few things. First, these twin shot snipers should not be in the deck. They're kind of bad. I don't like them. Would much rather have Reckless Stormseeker in this slot. The Stormseekers give 1 creature every turn +1/+0 on haste, and remember it can target itself, so it's basically a 3 mana 3/3 haster. But this really allows the deck to be super aggressive, gives basically everything else we play haste and +1/+0. If it flips, it's even more powerful. If you don't want to play Reckless Stormseeker, just Lightning Strikes here would be better. I'd rather play 2 more Lightning Strikes than these twin shot snipers, personally. I also think Abrades can be taken out of the main board and moved to the sideboard. They're great in specific matchups, but there aren't as many artifact decks in Standard right now, though hold on to these because we do have an artifact set coming, 3 or 4 months from now? When Brothers War comes out, that's an artifact set, so these might be main boardable again in a few months, so be aware of that if you're watching this at a later date. Right now, at rotation, I don't think Abrades are absolutely necessary in the main board right this second, so I'd rather take out these 3 Abrades that we have in the deck right now and just replace them with additional copies of some of the stuff we're already playing. I'd personally prefer 1 Reckless Stormseeker, 1 Ovenwold Oddity, and 1 Helana and Elena. So 3 Abrades into these 3 cards is my personal preference. Just makes the deck more consistent, makes the deck more aggressive, also makes Quirion Beastcaller more powerful as it gives us more creatures. And you'll probably want to move these into the sideboard because they are a great sideboard choice, good interaction, useful against artifacts, stuff like that. After that, we need to look at the mana base. We need to take out these 2 Lair of the Hydras. Ideally, these would be 1 each of the channel lands from Kamigawa, but unfortunately, the green one is a little bit expensive. The red one, Sokkensen, is also like $3 or $4. It's also a little bit expensive, but the green one is very expensive. So you can just replace them with basics or Carplusion Forest. 2 Lair of the Hydras for a couple Carplusion Forests, that's fine. If you don't want to spend money on those, and a couple basics is fine. In fact, my exact preference would be to take out 2 Lairs for 2 Carplusion Forests, which aren't too expensive. Then I would probably take out another basic land for a 3rd Carplusion Forest. It is scary to play 4 of them, but 3's fine, I think. And then I would also want to replace 1 mountain with 1 Sokkensen, but that's very unnecessary. You're looking at 3 Carplusion Forests, 1 Sokkensen. Is that necessary? It's nice, but it's not like 100% required. You can just replace these 2 Lairs with 2 basic forests, and if that's all you want to do just to get the deck up and running again, that's absolutely fine. And then we have the sideboard, and this is also fairly simple. We can replace the 3 Thundering Rebukes for the 3 Abrades we took out of the main board. Good against artifacts, good against creature-based aggro decks. It's nice to have access to them. Don't know if it's 100% necessary in the main board of a best of 3 deck, assuming you're playing at Friday Night Magic. I think they go in the sideboard for starters, then you can bring it in if you really need that interaction against other aggro decks. Froghemoth can probably be replaced with like Cemetery Prowler. It's another offensive threat that can hate out graveyards, which was the idea with Froghemoth, so that's fine. And then we have Burning Hands. This can be replaced with Rending Flames or Flame Blessed Bolt. I would say in a vacuum, I would prefer Rending Flames, but in Standard right now, I think Flame Blessed Bolt is probably the choice, because there is the black aggro deck that has all these recursive threats that just keep coming back. And there's also Tenacious Underdog. There's lots of decks that are running these obnoxious creatures that just come back from the graveyard over and over again, and Flame Blessed Bolt just exiles them. So I think that's probably better right now. Bring that in against Tenacious Underdog and stuff. Also be sure to replace the Kappa Tech Wreckers with Outland Liberators, as these are just better, even if they aren't Ninja Turtles. And also keep in mind that, it's a sideboard, right? Your sideboard is very adjustable. Always be willing to adjust your sideboard to your local metagame. But yeah, there you go. This is my final deck list. Link in the description. This gets the deck back into standard legality. And while we did have to change a few cards, most of them were very easy to replace. Most of them are fairly cheap. So if you need a deck right now, you can get this deck back into standard without too much trouble. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that's useful. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.